everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle, and with me today, just Tim McNeil.
Yeah,
now, that doesn't mean just Tim McNeil. It just means just Tim McNeil. Rod is not able to make it today. He's facing some of those technological dilemmas that we're out there fixing most days. So his loss. But Tim, how you doing, man?
Doing well. How about you?
No complaints. No complaints. But you know, as I always like to say, nobody's here to hear us talk anyhow. They're here for our guests. And today we have Sean Naugher from DaZZee. I'm sorry. I knew I was going to get that wrong. And he's joining us today to tell us a little bit about his adventure, which actually goes all the way back to the dial-up days in terms of what he's been able to offer right through, you know, becoming a modern day MSP. So with that, welcome, Shane. How are you?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me. I feel like I'm kind of grown up now on a real podcast for you guys. So,
and I'm going to apologize again because Shane just told me how to properly pronounce DaZZee just before this call, and I couldn't retain it for 35 seconds, which is about right. But Shane, you know, maybe kick things off and tell us a little bit about yourself and, you know, how you ended up in the industry and, you know, what drove you to becoming the MSP and MSSP that you are today.
Sure. So I will venture to say we're probably one of the few, if not only, folks you'll probably talk to on this podcast that started out in the dial-up ISP days. That was my first business. Started in the late 90s. We had a corporate entity that we were taking care of from the IT services perspective and needed to bring in larger bandwidth pipes for them and started pricing out T1s. And thought, well, if we're bringing in a T1, you know, what are we going to do with all that bandwidth? We might as well break it up and start selling it to dial-up customers. So we partnered with a group of guys I knew out of Kansas City, and we started a dial-up internet service business. And in the early days, you know, we started looking at the cost to get started with it. These guys were big Cisco shops, so looking at the cost of those AS5300s in the day, you know, they were, off the top of my head, I want to say they're like 50, 60 grand to get going.
I bet you at least that.
Yeah. And, you know, as a guy in his late 20s, thought I knew everything. I was like, no, there's a cheaper way to do this. I'm going to go source our own equipment. And ended up going with some knockoff equipment that was like 15 grand. And, you know, I thought I'd got a real steal on that. And, worked well for about the first year when we built up a good customer base, and comes along on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and thing goes belly up, and we go over to, to knock to see what's going on, and it posts and throws some error code or whatever. We call into support, and they're on the East Coast, so they closed at 5 o'clock, and we were down from 5 o'clock Friday all the way till Monday morning. So long story short, they ended up losing about a third of our customer base over the course of the weekend, and made the determinations that maybe these guys that have been in the industry know what they're talking about. So we made the investment to go with Cisco after that point. And really that kind of started our relationship with Cisco. And, you know, fortunately, we were able to exit that business prior to the bottom falling out of that, the dial-up ISP market, if you will. And after we exited that business, we had some really good contacts with Cisco, and they came and met with us and said, hey, we've got an opportunity for you. Think that you guys would be a great fit. And they partnered us up with Southwestern Bell, which is the local telco in our area. This is back before they merged with AT&T. So the idea and the gist there was that we would partner with Southwestern Bell. Cisco wanted to push a lot of gear. They asked us to get certified in their IP telephony product lines and security product lines. So over the course of early 2000s to really up until AT&T merged with them in 2006, we did a lot of design work. We went on those pre-sales calls, did the design work, built the bill of materials, helped them sell the solutions to the clients, and then did the installation and follow-up after the fact. And so things worked really well in that relationship. Up until, like I say, AT&T merged with it, they put an end to it. But what it allowed us to do is a small, you know, IT firm out of Southwest Missouri, got into a lot of large-scale environments that we couldn't have gotten them to take our phone call. You know, banks, hospitals, government agencies, you name it. We got in and did a lot of that design work. And so we kind of became known in the area as the Cisco engineering team. And, so it was a good business model at the time. After AT&T merged, we ended up having to bring on our own sales force. And I was fortunate enough to be able to hire one of the Southwestern Bell sales managers away, bring him onto our team. And so we expanded into had sales reps in St. Louis, Rogers, Arkansas, and Springfield, Missouri. And so all was great. We were doing a lot of really cool things and exciting things around Cisco infrastructure up until 2008 happened. And we all kind of know what happened after that. But
difficult time period. Yeah, it is amazing, when you look back at it, and, obviously I've got some gray hairs on my head. So that was a prime time period for me too. And that whole shift of that 10 years where it really went from dial up to the point where there was starting to be some high speed bandwidth available, and really how Cisco owned the market at that stage. And to your point, those costs, I remember buying a Cisco 6500 switch, and we were paying almost, fully loaded upwards of, $90,000, $100,000 at that point. Yeah. And it's just amazing to think, that stuff was running at 10, 100, and right. We were psyched, so it was a totally different world, but that's pretty cool. It is funny how those relationships can find you, and they can really help you instill a brand and really get you the recognition there. But let's take a look at, kind of 2008 and beyond. I mean, I'm sure some of those relationships didn't go away, but I'm sure some of the people running those relationships went away during that period.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. And, in our market, it didn't really hit or sink in till probably mid 2009. But when that happened, we went from, like I say, having 3 different sales offices to kind of consolidating back to a single office. And it really forced us to kind of look at where the industry was going. And, I will say at that point in time, managed services was beginning to be talked about a little more seriously. We never wanted to evaluate it because, our reputation was built around that high-end infrastructure type work. So if it didn't have a Cisco logo on it, we wouldn't touch it. We stepped over all of that server work, PC work, everything like that. But in 2010, beginning of 2010, I realized we've got to make that transition. And it wasn't an easy transition for us. Most of my guys, had spent the last 10 years building up Cisco certifications and high-end security certifications. And now we're telling them, hey, you got to go work on printers, and you got to fix, someone's email inbox and their mobile phones, those type of things. So it wasn't an easy transition, but, at that point in time, I think one of the things that kind of kicked us into that space was I attended I don't even remember what conference it was, but Gary Pico was presenting at it and kind of opened my eyes to what was possible there. And so we kind of signed on in those early days, and didn't do a whole lot with it from that point, probably for about 1.5 years. But during that transition, to kind of highlight the difficulty changing over, our first customer I signed as the sales rep, I was also the guy that went out and did all of the maintenance and onboarding for him because my team was just so opposed to it. And I was like, guys, just trust me, we'll get there and this will work out. But that's what got us started down the path of the managed service provider industry. And it was a shift in mentality and shift in staffing and people and expertise, the whole 9 yards.
That's an interesting statement you just made there, though, that they weren't on board with doing it, because I would assume you had really high-priced, high-end Cisco talent at that stage, and they found this work to be beneath them, right? That kind of concept. Absolutely. So that must have been an interesting period of time for you to have the payroll that's usually associated with them, and then the reluctance to go do the work, and then ultimately knowing this was the way of the future for you.
Yeah, and it was, and really I think what helped this transition along the path was we still had some good loyal clients that survived past 2008 that did a lot of project work, some hospitals that reached out to us. So we still had some of that, residual project work coming in. We had some consultants in the business that still relied on us to handle their projects. So we could kind of take small steps towards moving towards managed services. And then when they started to see that even with managed services, there's opportunities, when you get into the larger accounts, that you can still do a lot of that same, design work, the engineering work, maintenance. And then they started to say, okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity if we build this and build the right talent in to support all of the service delivery areas, maybe that there's a path forward.
So, talk a little bit about where that brings you into today, and what you're really focused on these days, and where do you see the vision of the future for you?
So for us, one of our core values is to make sure that we provide exceptional service to the right customers. And we really highlight the right customers, because there's not a prospective client that I meet with on any given week that I don't feel like we can bring some value or help to. But if they're not an organization that realizes the impact on technology can have on their business and their lives, they treat it as an expense rather than an investment in their future. We really want to have a serious discussion about, is that the right fit for us, the right fit for them, to make sure that we're going to bring them the value they look for, and they're going to be the type of client that we want to serve. So we are selective in the clients that we bring on, but it's because we want to make sure we're providing the value that's there. But as we've transitioned over the last 10 years, really, I think the most exciting and challenging time is where we are today, and looking at the cybersecurity and managed security offerings. That's where, I feel like the biggest opportunities as well as challenges are today.
Yeah, that's, go ahead, Ted.
I was just going to say, I mean, the transition, we've talked about it a number of times, especially since COVID hit. I mean, just the transition specifically with focusing more on security. I was just talking to a security company earlier today, actually, that is, I mean, they're just absolutely blowing up right now. They're basically, they cannot keep up with the demand, because what they're trying to partner with MSPs to get their service out there. And it's, making that move and being more into that security it's the way of the world. It's not going backwards. It's only going to get more extreme.
Especially, you look at the CMMC move that's been kind of pushed in the last 2 years, really. And we do a lot with manufacturing. So obviously that comes into play heavily there. But I think the industry as a whole still has a ways to go before people really accept that those are requirements at this point. It's not an optional. You can't make the same assumptions that things are going to be protected just because someone's assigned to do it.
I think it's even going beyond that, where it's more than just the requirements. It's that people are actually going to hold you to it and expect to see the controls truly. I saw some stat just recently where they said 75% of the people that went through the CMMC reported imperfect scores. And it's almost impossible. Everybody's accepting some level of risk, and they expect that. It actually puts you in a more suspect position, right? But I think there is truth to that concept, and we say it all the time. Security never goes out of style. We've been talking about this, since the dial-up ISP days in some way, shape, or form, and we'll continue to talk about it. But I think it also reinforces that, the next generation MSP is going to have to really have their advisory game on point as well, and be ready to kind of go back to where our roots probably came from, Shane, where there was a lot of consulting to get to the project for a fee, and getting back to that. Hey, these, our customers are going to need help, security, automation, analytics, pick your poison. Now that with the real technology shifting to being cloud-based, more and more of us are really going to have to figure out how are we going to help them enhance that cloud and really become, true business partners to them, beyond where we've been today.
And I think there's a misconception around cloud. I was just talking with a client last week that was evaluating the option of moving from on-prem to the cloud. And there's this misconception that we just get it off premise and it's going to be totally secure. There's no security.
Everything's fine. And
I asked him, I said, well, if we moved it from the server room to your stock room, does that change anything in terms of, well, no. And so I think there's that, the misconception that just because you get it off site, that security is automatically going to be a good. So there's some challenges to make sure people get educated around it.
I think that is that's the norm, right? People, they just think, oh, it's in the cloud, it's fine, don't worry about it. It's no different than somebody getting Office 365 and thinking, oh, I'm fine, I don't need backup.
That's what I'm taking care of. I I think that's the biggest misnomer out there, right? If I go to the cloud, everything's protected through and through. And it's like, no, not close. But hey, that's where the MSPs like yourself, Shane, are out there educating people and telling them what they need to do. So, what I'd like to ask you, Shane, is, if you were going to say what was a catalyst event, and you've already kind of mentioned a couple, right? Starting in dial-up and then those relationships kind of starting chapter 1 of your company and then segueing into, the down market and how you came out of it. But if I was to say to you, what is one of the catalyst events that have really shaped who you are or who your business is today? What would you say that might be?
I'd have to go back to, there's a couple of events that I would refer to. One, 2013, my father-in-law was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in May. And he was a tremendous mentor to me, both personally as well as from a business perspective. He was diagnosed in May and unfortunately passed away in October of 2013. So seeing that transition, he had, at the time he passed away, he had 16 different businesses that he was running. So a lot on his plate. It really kind of made me take a hard look of where I was at in terms of my business. Up to that point, I was really kind of treating the business as a lifestyle business, where basically if it supported what I wanted to do, that was kind of the growth plan. But it really made me take a hard look at where do I go with this from a family perspective, from a lifestyle and estate planning perspective. And so kind of kicked me into gear to where I realized I needed to put some specific plans in place. And I'm a very goal-oriented person to begin with. So, that kind of started me really looking at where we're going and how we get there and establishing some hard goals. But then in 2016, I joined a peer group, and I would say that's probably one of the most impactful decisions I ever made. And I tried a couple of ones before that, but 2016, we really connected with a core group of guys that, to this day, I communicate with them daily. And they really challenged me, not only just, on normal business decisions, but also kind of the upper limit problem that we have. We limit what we feel like is possible. So that core group of guys really was probably one of the most impactful things that I've experienced in business, and something I still rely on today.
And that's actually another thing that how many times, Brian, if we talked about that, whether it's a peer group or a business coach, it's almost
universal. I bet you 75% of our MSP guests have said the turning point in their business is when they entered into some formal coaching and or peer group process. Until they invested into that, both time and monetary resource, they were just kind of flatline. And that's where the acceleration really started. Part of the reason we started doing this was, similar thing was just to kind of help MSPs get the information they need from peers, especially some of those ones that might be too junior to go yet to those peer groups. You can still hear some of the steps people have taken, because it is amazing how that support network just blossoms. And when you look at those top MSPs, the ones that show up on all the 501 lists and all that, there's one common thread usually in all of them. They belong to somebody's peer group.
Yeah, and it helps just, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say real quick. I think it also helps that you've got organizations like ASCII and even other established peer groups creating like lower tier peer groups for people to graduate to the peer group that you're in, right? Or that a higher level, more mature MSP is in. I think that's something that's taken the industry over by storm, and it's only benefiting the consumer, because everybody's just getting more mature that much faster.
Absolutely. And I think there is a growth path. I was in because we're a member of a couple now, and I was in a peer group call earlier this week with a guy that's been in the industry for 20 some years. And you look at where he's at from a financial perspective and the growth of the business, and you think, okay, this guy's really mature where he's going along the path. But there's still always this element of self-limiting beliefs that hinder that growth. And having a core group of folks that can push you, challenge you, and make sure that there is always a horizon you're looking at and something that you're shooting for. Yeah, I think it's it's invaluable.
So we only got a couple minutes left, but Shane, is there anything that you guys are really trying to get done, or is anything you're trying to take to market right now that you want to share with your audience or share out there in the marketplace? Where are you pushing business these days?
Biggest push we have is around the cybersecurity services. With every organization we talk to, every one of them seem to be minimizing what their true risk is. And so our biggest challenge right now is making sure that people at least have data to understand what their risk is and the liability. We want to help make sure that we bring that to light, make sure that they make decisions based upon data, not on feelings and assumptions.
Awesome. So with that, I think, Tim, it's time for the 5 fast questions.
Yeah.
The bane of Tim's existence, but it
I know
came back.
And for anybody that's listening, if you were an early adopter to listening to us, we had these 5 questions, right? Then we got away from it for a while, and then we've actually had people bring it back up, saying they want to hear it again. So here we are. All right. So Brian, I found the old ones.
Okay, so beautiful.
So, all right. So the first one is talk, text, or Teams.
It's got to be Teams.
Yeah. Agreed. Music, movies, or TV?
It's going to be a toss-up between movies and music. Big family guy, so always enjoy going to the movies with my family.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Mac or Windows?
Mac all the way. Won't touch a Windows machine unless I just have to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What age do you want to retire?
What age do I want to retire?
Yeah.
That's a good question. And I guess we'd have to define what retire looks like.
Yep.
I want to retire early enough that I can still enjoy the time I have and travel and do the things I want to do.
That's fair. So
I think we hear that comment from everybody. It's what is really retirement? Probably never stop.
What is that?
Just
what does that
stop
really
doing
mean?
it as hard.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into the last question. If there was one thing you would do outside of the IT world, what would it be?
It's a good question. If I weren't in this business, I would say I would probably be doing something similar, because one of the aspects I've learned over the last probably 5 to 7 years is I really enjoy digging into the data analytics and the KPIs and helping business owners see what the bottlenecks are on their businesses, what the levers are that they can adjust to provide results. So I probably doing something around data analytics and consulting.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for that as we continue to progress in the future. Well, Shane, thank you for being our guest today. Really appreciate you jumping on with us. In Rob's absence, I guess I'll pick up the closure here. You will be able to download this episode wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube these days as well. And we'll have this posted out on social media as well. Shane, thank you so much for joining. Tim, as always, thank you for joining. Yeah. And we'll see you again next episode, guys. Take care.
Good seeing you, Shane.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good day.